At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES Podcast, episode number 264. I am Greg, joined always by Joe.
Hello.
And this time, we're looking at another more than one game in one episode. There's a lot of those we're doing at this time of the year. For some reason, we didn't plan it out this way; it just happened. But as I recall, as I recall, originally this was like my pick because I have a nostalgia for the original version of these games, at least. So we're looking today at Super NES ports of the original Prince of Persia 1 and 2 that came out to the Super NES. I say original games because these are ports of the original 1989 and 1992. Let me confirm that that's correct. 1993 Prince of Persia games, because as we get into in a moment, the series has been rebooted twice in the year since then. So it can get a little bit confusing, especially if you're not old enough or have not been gaming long enough to remember just how far back the franchise goes. That goes back to the past. So, having said that, Joe, was this your first time playing the first two games in the series? I thought I have experience with the newer Prince of Persia games. What about these two? Like originally?
So, I do vaguely remember playing the DOS version of the first game.
Okay.
And it was over like my aunt's like boyfriend's house. One of those things where he put me in front of the PC. It was my first gaming experience on a PC. Of course, first played like Wolfenstein 3D because, you know, a Jew going around shooting Nazis. I guess that's the thing to do. And then he popped in this game and showed me Prince of Persia, and I was pretty impressed. I mean, it was definitely different than what I had just been playing, but that was my first experience. And then like from then on, I wanted a PC to be able to just game on, just because, you know, I was shown like two different spectrums. Like the first person shooter with blood and guts versus a precision platformer. And of course, you know, growing up with the NES, like platformers are my jam. You know, even cheesy ones sometimes. So, it definitely resonated with me. As far as the second game goes, this was the first time I played it, because believe it or not, I did not know there was a second game. I knew of Prince of Persia, obviously, as a franchise, but the first game was the only one I had any sort of exposure to. I did not realize there was a second one. To me, it goes the original Prince of Persia, and then jumps all the way to, like, I think it's like 2004 or 5, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, when they came out with Sands of Time. So, and then, you know, that timeline going forward.
Yeah. The timeline of the franchise is definitely confusing, so I don't blame you for not being like aware of that, because it actually was. So I'm going to cover this in very broad strokes, just to our listeners. If you want more detail, there are tons of podcasts and videos you can find online, which go into very deep dives about the franchise, and also have great interviews with legendary game designer Jordan Mechner, who is the one who created these games. But the franchise basically has three periods in which there were games made for it. And for the original games, there was actually 3 games that all tied together in the same story, setting, characters, whatever. Prince of Persia 2, Shadow and the Flame, and Prince of Persia 3D. And that pretty much ends the first series of the franchise. And then the franchise then went through, as I mentioned before, 2 reboots. Because the original company, Bund, which made developed and published the games. Bund, probably best known for people, was having despite us having originally made the Carmen Sandiego series, which is still alive today.
Right.
So,
Yep.
they were very educational games with their bread and butter, but they did do a lot of other video games as well. And so they originally were the original creators. When they went bankrupt, Ubisoft bought the rights to the franchise, which has rights to the franchise today. So they did a reboot of the franchise 2003 with Sands of Time, as Joe just mentioned, which is very successful, and that went on to have three other games, three sequels, and then the franchise got rebooted again, 2008 with a game just called Prince of Persia to make it be more confusing than it already is. So there definitely is a lot of, like I said before, this is a bit complicated, but in broad strokes, that's what happened.
And that 2008 release coincided with the movie.
Which is not very good either, unfortunately.
Correct. So because the movie bombed, they basically just abandoned the idea of picking that up and...
Well, for a long time, Prince of Persia was a dead franchise because for a long time the last mainline game was 2010 Prince of Persia, The Forgotten Sands, which I played a bit of. Like it was all right. There were remakes and ports, but we didn't get another new original game in the franchise until like the Lost Crown came out last year. I've not played Lost Crowns. I can't speak anything about it, but the game looks like it did look all right.
It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up. That's the best way to describe it. It does incorporate some of the original elements of Prince of Persia, as like you can't just button mash. There is like a parry system and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then just to piggyback off of that, they recently released in early access, and I think it's available now on consoles, Prince of Persia Rogue, which is literally an updated modernization of Prince of Persia, as you would see it here back in 1989 when this game came out. So,
I think I mentioned that. Yes. So it actually, that actually just got a full release on Windows, PS5, and Xbox 5 days ago as a recording. It's August 20th.
There we go.
So it will be available on Switch 2 sometime later on this year as well. But so that finally left like early access recently. Yeah, because I had to keep an eye on that too. And I hadn't realized that you already had played it I played the early access version though, so I'll check it out. But
I mean, I played the early access version on Steam for like, oh my god, I played the crap out of that. I really enjoyed it. So some people who might be thinking about it.
Well, Lost Crown sold well, but unfortunately the game suffered the same fate that many modern AAA games had to go through. We're found in the category of it's sold well, but not well enough. So Ubisoft closed it, but Ubisoft disbanded the development team. So I don't know if or when we're getting another mainline Prince of Persia game because of that. There is the much delayed in development hell remake of Sands of Time, which is hopefully coming out next year finally. But considering the development hell that game's been going through in recent years, and maybe you know something about this, Joe, my fingers are crossed that it actually will get released at some point because they teased that thing years ago.
So I'm not holding my breath, and I believe. Right. So I'm not holding my breath on that remake, and if I did, I believe you would need to find a new co-host, because I think death would come to me first before we get that game. But I could be wrong. But that's how I feel. Like, there's been, little tidbits that have been released here and there, like basically, like, hey, it's alive still. It's coming. Well,
they had to. So they started the development at least once, if not twice. So
So at this point, my feeling is we're either getting Sands of Time remake or remaster, or we're getting GTA 6. Somewhere in the timeline, we're not getting both. So,
GTA 6, I have full confidence will come out next year because Rockstar is much better release deadlines than Ubisoft is. But
that is true.
I'm not going to vilify Ubisoft here because people have already done that for me. Like en masse. But the newer Prince of Persia games are very different than the older games. As a matter of fact, I'll talk on Jordan Mesher, the developer here, a bit about that because of segues. Jordan Mechner already had created one very well-known game, Karateka, which is like a karate fighting game, and like Prince of Persia uses the same rotoscoping techniques that game did, and a lot of other graphical techniques that they pulled off. Like he did write, so he did write the sequel, but he didn't actually program it himself. His team did that, but still, Prince of Persia definitely has his fingerprints like all over it because, spoiler, it plays very similar to the first game, just like better, like in many ways. But there was a, I'm not sure if you finished Prince of Persia 2 or saw the ending, Joe, but there's a teaser in the ending to a third game, which never actually came out. Because the third game that came out instead, Prince of Persia 3D, he was only involved as a, he was only involved in that project like as an advisor. So, so like as a result, although the game plays very similar to Prince of Persia in many ways, the name, as it implies, they went to a 3D perspective for it, and the game got mixed reviews. So that's a large part why the franchise was just like dead and forgotten about for many years, until Ubisoft gave it the reboot with Hands of Time. And Jordan Mechner's on record of saying that one reason he really didn't like the Prince of Persia 3D very much was because he felt the game was playing too much like Tomb Raider, which is a very popular game in the time period. And because of that, he's not very happy with the modern Prince of Persia games because those games are very Tomb Raider in many areas. Yes. It's like they're very. I mean, I get his point. They're fun games, but they're very different from the first game. They still have DNA of the first games involved in them, but they're much more Tomb Raiders, much more Metroidvania, much more exploring, and what's what I'm going for here? Much more combat heavy than the original games were. Yeah. So I understand what you're talking about. It's like, Jordan's not the first person who's created a popular franchise and then lost control over it, and has bemoaned the fact afterwards, look, they did my baby. So, I get where he's coming from. The newer Prince of Persia games, I think, are fine. They're just different than the original games for sure, as far as gameplay and whatnot. However, a lot of franchises evolve and change over the years. Prince of Persia is certainly not the one to have done that, but anyway. So the original game came out in 1989, and it was for a system that people don't think about. Think about video games. It was originally made for the Apple II. Which Beretta Bond published a lot of educational games. Apple II was a big platformer there, so it made sense. It made sense that it would develop it for it. So, and he pushed the system to its limits. The game actually looks and sounds great on the Apple II because it wasn't the easiest system in the world to program for. So, being able to get that game out on that. It's very impressive, especially for its time period, because 1989 was very late for 8-bit systems like the Apple II, as well. But rotoscoping was used to again, as I mentioned before. In order to get the movements of the characters right when they were doing combat, he asked his brother to dress up in white clothing and do aerobatic stunts, and then those moves techniques were then programmed, programmed the game to get that very fluid, realistic look that the game has when it comes to combat. Mechner was inspired by numerous sources, he said, in making this game. Obviously, his previous game, Karateka, he took a lot from that. Also, obviously, 1001 Night Stories was also a huge source of inspiration for this game, of course, because it's setting the title and everything. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Adventures to Robin Hood, they also served as inspiration, used inspiration for it. So, the game's a platformer. Technically, it's a platformer. There definitely are actually adventure aspects to it. But for the most part of these two games, you were just simply platforming around areas. So the basic story of the game is that, it's the past, it's Persia. You play as a young foreign adventurer who's an orphan, stowed away in a merchant ship to get to Persia. Happened to have a chance meeting with the Sultan's daughter, and the two of you fell in love. And the Sultan himself is away in another country fighting a war at this time period. And so the Sultan's Grand Vizier Jafar is ruling the country. He's not approved. He doesn't approve of romance at all because he wanted to marry the princess for himself. So he has the prince arrested. Then goes to the prince's bedroom demanding that she marry him. When she refuses, he basically gives her an ultimatum. It's like, you have this long to decide to marry me, you're going to die. So, in the original game and most versions of the game, you only have 60 minutes to complete the game with. The Super NES version of the game had extra length added onto it, which we'll talk about here in depth in a moment. So they gave an extra hour, 120 minutes, to compensate for the extra length that this game has. So, basically, so it operates in real time. And then basically you just have to try to go through the dungeons in Lower Castle to escape and to be able to defeat defeat Jafar and rescue the princess before she dies. So the gameplay basically, as I said, is like platforming. It's not a particularly complicated castle map. There are some optional side paths. But basically, these games definitely fall in the category of, I know what I need to do. I'm just not sure how to. I'm just not sure how to go. I'm just not sure how to go about doing it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the game involves trying to figure out how to navigate traps, trying to figure out how to defeat enemies correctly, because you find a sword later on, which you absolutely need to be able to advance. Don't go on my way to find these potions. So potions that give me extra health points or not. And the traps operate in very different ways. For example, there's spiked areas of the floor, which you can't jump onto or fall onto, but you can walk through those spikes fine without any problem. So, learning how to navigate and get over the traps and whatnot is a critical part of the gameplay. So, combat is one-on-one because, limitations to the system. The system, you only have one enemy on the screen at a time, whatever. Apple IIs are notoriously very hard to program music for. So that's why this original game had very little music. There was an opening theme, an ending theme, which was all ending theme, which was very nice. It's all very Arabic, Middle Eastern in sound. There's short little victory tunes, like to beat an enemy or drink a potion, or sound effects are pretty good, but music in the game is very minimal. Its original version. So, and there was, and so the original game, the original game can be saved after you finish each level. There's 13 levels. Original game, before we get to Jafar. So, Prince of Persia still okay in the Apple II, but obviously Apple II was not known for being a gaming platform, especially this lifespan. So, it really wasn't until the game was ported to other consoles that the popularity of it really took off, which again we've seen before with other franchises. And this may be one of the most ported video games in history, because altogether there was altogether from the original up till now, there was 20 ports of this game onto other systems computers. So to say it got ported a lot is not an understatement. So I'll just run down the list real quickly here of the other games. I know five systems that got a port the game over the years. You had after the original Apple II, you had DOS, the NEC PC 9801, Amiga, Atari ST, the X68000 computer, Armstead, the Sam Coupe, which was a European computer, TurboGrafx 16, Game Boy, FM Towns, Master System, Super NES, of course, obviously, Sega CD, NES, the Macintosh, Game Gear, Genesis, Game Boy Color, mobile, Xbox 360, PS3, BlackBerry, iOS, 3DS, Wii, and Android. So, and that doesn't even count the unofficial ports that the ports homebrews have done this game for other systems over the years. So, I'm not surprised that you didn't play the game like the NES, Joe. Because even though the NES port is not awesome, it's not great. It is playable.
The NES one at this time, this wouldn't have even been on my radar as far as NES is concerned. Game Boy, I don't even remember seeing it for the Game Boy, and actually, while doing some independent research on this game, I found out about the Game Boy and Game Gear ports and heard they're horrible. Like, absolutely the worst way to play the game.
They tried at least.
That being said, I haven't tried either one. I am going to because I am curious, but I assume a lot of Game Gear games, if you've ever played the Game Gear, has a lot of stuttering as it does like scrolling.
Yeah.
And the Game Boy kind of suffers from the same situation. So I can see how in a game like this, that would be detrimental to the gameplay and would be, negatively received. But I also think that, much like Prince of Persia in general, I think through persistence and the constant failing and learning, I think you would be able to play it on the Game Boy and Game Gear no issue, and that stuttering wouldn't become a factor.
Right, yeah. So, no, I agree with you. Real quick here to finish this up, the Game Boy Color being a more powerful system is a pretty good approximation like the original game.
Okay.
Genesis plays very similar to Super NES version, so, just typical differences you expect between the systems.
Right.
Master System also suffers the same problems that the NES version had. Trying to get this game, trying to downgrade this game like an 8-bit system was not the easiest thing they were to do. The Sega CD version is interesting. Interesting the fact they added on to it to the game some as well also, but it's a bit slow. But certainly like but they're a pretty looking version of the game at least.
Yeah.
So obviously Broderbound did not do most of this porting work themselves.
Right.
The Super NES version of the game was ported over and worked on by a company called Arsis Software, which later was renamed as Cyberhead. They were active in Japan from 1985 to 2001. Their biggest games didn't come out in the West. They did, however, heavily work with Namco on the Air Combat and Gran Turismo series. However, so some of their DNA definitely shows through, like in those games at least. So, and in Japan, a company called Messiah published it. However, as I mentioned, Prince of Persia was so popular, so successful that nonetheless, then Konami decided to publish the game, the Super NES version of the game in Latin America and Europe. So Konami also had published the NES version of King's Quest V, so they're no strangers to taking ports of popular computer games and releasing them on consoles. I played Prince of Persia 1 2 a lot, like a computer back in the day. I never played the Super NES version of the game. I was very surprised that basically the Konami published it, because I'm okay, that just goes to show how popular the game actually was, because they don't publish back then at least they didn't publish crap games.
Right.
So, and this came out in Japan originally for Japan first in July of '92, and then about a few months later in November for the U.S. and Europe. So, the Super NES version of the game is much different and much expanded than the original game because they had extra space in the cart. So, the developers went above and beyond, I think at least, to port the game with Super NES and give it a whole bunch of extra bells and whistles. So, Joe, I'm curious, since you have, I know you have a little bit of experience with the original game. I'm curious to know your impressions playing this game on Super NES, and if you remember, how anything compared or contrasted to the original game that you played like all those years ago.
All right. Well, all those years ago, I didn't get very far. So,
nobody did back then. It was a very hard game, but
so I learned a lot and got to see a lot more this time around. I felt the character that you're playing has weight to it, and that's hard to explain to someone without actually playing it and understanding like that control and what that feels like. But like you have to get like a running start. There needs to be momentum to be able to make larger gaps. That momentum will transfer over when you hit that platform. So a lot of times, you're trying to slow down so that you don't overshoot it. Sword play was okay. I can't complain there. This is one of those games. Thank God there's a password system after every level. So yes, you have
the
2
main
hours.
menu is actually like very. Sorry, yeah, the main menu is actually very robust. So,
yeah,
the password system I think is about the blessing and a curse. I would have preferred, I would have preferred the ability to save, like the original game did. However, passwords do allow you to be able to jump ahead in the game if you want to, it's like there's also cheat passwords, which we get to,
right.
which cover here at the end of the podcast, which allow you to give you like certain legs up to have the game easier for you. So, the password system at least allows that. You have a training system you can use to help get used to the gameplay and mechanics, which is very nice. And you can also do a best time option where they compete to try to figure out, basically just how fast can you get through a section. So both those things are very nice to include because they give you, as Joe just said, control can be a bit difficult and take a bit to get used to, and the game does require in some areas pinpoint controls.
Yeah.
So having the inclusion of both the training and the best time, I really liked because because they give you the chance to practice on the game and hopefully help you get better at it. So, sorry, anyway, wanted to mention that. So go ahead.
No, it's all good. So the password system I felt was definitely important to mention just because, yes, you have 2 hours to beat this game, and that is 2 real-time hours to beat this game. But with the passwords, it at least gives you that ability to kind of stretch that out, and you don't have to sit there and play for 2 hours straight if you don't want to. So that's huge. I, of course, did not take care of didn't take advantage of the training. Just jumped headfirst into this, so I died a lot. As you'd expect in this game, which, I mean, even with the training, you're still going to die a lot. It takes quite a bit to kind of get a grip with
progress is baby steps in this game. Yes, for sure. Because like you figure out how to figure one area, and then like now this is area they could like figure out how to do. So
But. So it's funny because like I put in my notes, this reminds me of like the first Castlevania, where like you have to remember patterns and you have to remember the layout and do all these things with precision and everything else. And then jumping ahead, Prince of Persia 2, there's actually Medusa heads that fly at you. So that they're quite a parallel there. But yeah, I mean that's the gameplay loop. Like you're, for the most part of the gameplay loop is you're just jumping platforms, jumping gaps, making it through the dungeons in the palace, and then you end up getting a sword, which you can then have some sword play one-on-one. Once you take down those enemies, you're back to the platforming. The platforming is what you're paying for with this game. That is the attraction, is the platforming. And, so one thing I put in my notes was there was a, in quotations, delay in the controls that makes it feel,
the original game had that also.
Like you're controlling a real person.
Yes,
you know what I mean? So, like, I saw a lot of reviews online that complained about, like, the delay in the controls. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, they're missing the point. Like, there's supposed to be a delay there.
Yes, yep.
It's
the original game had that
there
also.
for a reason. Right.
Yep,
so like I said, it takes some getting used to, and it is that quote-unquote delay that really forces you to kind of learn the mechanics and whatnot before you get into the meat of it. But, I mean, everything, like Greg said, there was 13 levels in the original game. You had an hour to beat it. Here, you got 20 levels, so you got 7 new levels. You're given 2 hours.
By the way, speedrunners can't beat this game like under 60 minutes. So,
I believe it.
So, like, the original time limit is still very possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, literally, as far as gameplay goes, I can't knock this game for anything. Actually, honestly, you'll probably be surprised, but I honestly can't knock this game at all. I think the gameplay is great. I think the graphics are good for its time. It's not fantastic. We've definitely seen better SNES games at this time.
The graphics and music got a significant upgrade compared to the original game, because it's like, I agree with you. Graphically, I think the game looks great.
Yeah.
It still captures the feel of the original game while still having the colors are bland and washed out. But again, remember, Apple II, black and white mostly, that's expected. But the background detail is great in this game. So and whatnot. And the music, like I said before, the original game didn't have music during the gameplay because, of course, the Apple II really couldn't handle it. But here, there's music playing during the stages, which really helps with the exploring aspect of it, because you're not quite as, I don't want to say bored, but at least you're more entertained going through the stages. So the music so the soundtrack overall, I think it's pretty good. It definitely fits very well. It fits very well the overall theme of the game.
Yeah, that's what I put. I put the music is very atmospheric. I actually felt that I was in, the Persia, atmosphere. And listening to the Arabic music, just kind of went with it. It's fantastic. Even when you die, like, sometimes when you hear that music over and over again, I think of, like, Legend of Zelda, and how I would get annoyed of hearing that over and over again. But here, like, it's really, it's good music. I didn't get annoyed by hearing that tone or that chime and that little bit of theme when you die, unlike most games. But yeah, I mean, if you compare it to the Apple II version, it's literally apples to oranges, pun intended. But like, this, to me, this is how you should play Prince of Persia, the first game. I think this might be, and keep in mind, there are other versions of this game that I have not played, but for what I have played, because I did play a bit of the Genesis version as well, which was not great. I personally,
what did you find wrong with the Genesis version of the game?
What's that?
What did you find wrong? What did you find wrong by the Genesis version? Because I haven't played that one myself.
So there, I do feel like there's a delay in controls, and it's not in a way that helps you. The colors and background were a bit more colorful than what you see on the Super Nintendo, but you see literally like the basic dungeon layout and the basic palace layout. Those are the only two layouts that you see throughout all the different levels. So like, it gets very redundant as far as like what you're seeing graphically and whatnot. So I mean, it's not horrible. It's definitely an experience, but this one was definitely better. And like I said, this, to me, in my opinion, this is the way to play Prince of Persia today. I would recommend the Super Nintendo version versus all the other ones that I played, which, again, I still haven't played, like, the TurboGrafx. I haven't played any of the modern, remakes or remasters of this game. You said there was one for the Android iOS, which I mean, for Android and iOS,
they're basically the original game, just like you port it over to touch. I ported over like touch controls, as you would say.
Yeah, so. And so for me, I'm really bad at those like platforming games where you have to use the touch controls. That never works for me. So I can't imagine without a controller me enjoying the Android or iOS version. But I'd probably say those are probably the definitive versions now at this point.
Well, actually, you may be surprised to hear this, but a lot of folks do consider back then as well as now the Super NES version is the first Super NES version of the game is one of the best versions of Prince of Persia to play. Even nowadays, partly because partly because the additional game content that was added on, but also probably because ours has put a lot of love and labor into this port and shows. It's all very beautifully recreated like the original game. So the dungeon layout has been changed significantly from the original Apple II game. There are some similarities, but the map's very different in this version of the game. So me as a kid, remembering what things are threw me off a little bit at first because I'm like, okay, this should be over here, but instead of instead this is over here. However, the actual game flow is still the same. So I appreciated the extra content very much. There's several mini boss battles you also have to go through, including a boss rush toward the end of the game, which is like very nice. So, how far did you get in the game, Joe? Before I talk about that more.
Yeah, so I want to say I got close to that boss rush towards the end, but I didn't quite finish it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't finish either game, unfortunately.
There's a nice part also added to this version of the game, which was not the original game, where it's like, you remember, the game has small cutscenes every now and then when you're going up levels that shows the princess in a room, and in one of the cutscenes you see her pet mouse attending to her. So so in the original game he was just flavor, but in this version of the game you reach one point where the Sultan, who also Jafar also shows up every now and then taunt you and or trap you. In one area of the game he traps you behind he traps you in an area, in a small area of the screen with two closed doors, and so you literally have to wait there for a minute or so, and eventually the mouse shows up, pushes on a tile, and it was like one of the walls for you. So that's a very nice touch. They're a touch of original game I didn't have. So but yeah, the Super NES version definitely reviewed very well back in the day. Mean Machines gave 93%. Bad Influence gave 8 out of 10 stars. It definitely was among the best versions of the game, and honestly, I think it's still I still think this is probably one of the best versions of the game to play to play today because of the enhancements. So, it's a shame the Switch doesn't have it because because I mentioned before, the 3DS and the Wii did have the Super NES version of the game via its virtual console when the systems were still active, but we haven't seen the game on the Switch yet. So, and I don't think that. I forget. Let me just check real quick here about Steam. Sometimes they have the older games on Steam, and I don't think they do in this case. Nope, they have the whole modern franchise and they have on here, including including the Rogue, which we were talking about, but not this game. So, so if you play this game. The phone versions are so old. I'm sure those versions are no longer even still around anymore these days because they're ported to phones over 10 years ago. So so you have to emulate this version of the game or buy it if you want to play it right now. But yeah, this is still a very good version of the game. Definitely by all accounts. So I guess The major flaws of the game are the same flaws the original game had. Joe mentioned the controls. The controls that can be a bit. You definitely have to get used to them. So the game can get tedious sometimes, especially with especially with bigger head trying to figure out how to get through a puzzle again and again and again. So and once you actually finish it, replayability is pretty low unless you want to get like a better time. But having said that, the Super NES also added like a bad ending to the game also as well if time runs out, which the original game didn't have. So just this is a really great example of how a game should be enhanced to a more powerful system, because basically almost everything in this game is like done right. So definitely really enjoyed playing this game. It definitely is it's different. The gameplay is different, but it still captures the essence of the original game well enough and enhances upon it to make it a very enjoyable experience, like all around. So So I think overall this version still holds up very well today, and still probably one of the premier versions of the game to play. For sure. So we'll mention cheat codes, like I said before. There are passwords that give you benefits and whatnot in eBay toward the end here, but before we move on to the sequel, Joe, anything else you want to say about this game before we move on here?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it.
So obviously, of course, with how popular the original game was, a sequel was, of course, planned. And like I said before, Meshner did not program Prince of Persia 2 directly himself, but he did write it and create it. So it definitely has his fingerprints there, like all over it. So the full name of the game is The Shadow and the Flame, which does pertain to events and things that happened in the game itself. So this was this time around, the game was originally made for the MS DOS platform, and was released in May of '93. So coming out for the Macintosh the following year. Unlike the original game, even though Prince of Persia 2 also sold very well, this game did not get ported. It was just on the Sun. Besides the DOS Macintosh versions, the game also got a port to the Japanese FM Town system that same year, and then 2 years later in '96, the Super NES version of the game finally came out. You may have found this when doing a bit of research yourself, Joe, also, but there was also a Genesis version of the game that was developed at the same time and planned to be released. But once again, this is another case where the Genesis version of the game was basically finished almost, but was never released for whatever for unknown reasons. So why that happened again? I couldn't find out why, but that version of the game has been leaked, so you can't find that ROM available online if you look for it. It's almost complete. I'd say about maybe 90% of the game's done. It certainly is playable, but so again, it plays very similar to the Super NES version of the game.
Yeah, my assumption would be spoiler because of how rare this game is. Sales were not well. And I imagine that was the reason for cutting the Genesis version, because poor sales on the Super NES. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah, but you're right about that, because like I said, the game originally on DOS and Mac sold very, very well, but the console ports didn't sell as great for reasons we'll get here in a moment. So that very could be a reason for it. You also the game was also included. The game was also included as an unlockable. So I had to mention this also with the first game. In Sands of Time, you could find a secret area that allows you to play this version of the game. The original PC version of the game as Prince of Persia 2 on the Xbox NTSC version of the game.
Huh. Interesting.
The PAL version of the game, as well as the GameCube and PS2 versions, feature the original Prince of Persia instead. The Windows version of the game lacks the secret area entirely for whatever reason. So, Easter egg about this game's being included. A remake of the game was also made for the iOS, like Android, again, like over 10 years ago. But again, those versions are no longer available because how old they are. So yeah. So basically, this game I said before is basically like the original game, only better, like better in every way. And I'm talking about the original PC version of the game, mind you, here. So, it basically is just a bigger, better version of the game. There's, compared to the first game, which was just entirely in the palace and the dungeons, you go to different locations in this one. So. More than one enemy can be facing you at a time, which is also very nice. There definitely are areas we need to like defeat enemies rapid fire one after another as they charge at you. So, controls feel still the controls are still heavy, but I felt overall that they were a little bit more smoother in this version of the game, at least. Puzzles are expanded upon. There are definitely some very like devious puzzles in this game. For example, there's one area in the game where we have to advance. You have to like jump up off the screen, like straight up off the edge of the screen 3 times to cause the ceiling to break. So you could jump up there to escape. So that definitely can be a very difficult thing to figure out how to do the first time around. So, there was music playing all through music was playing all through the game. There was voice acting present in the game also. The opening stories and the cutscenes and whatnot had voices in them. So, which is very rare for 1993.
Yeah.
So, that's a nice touch. There's still a time limit in this game. It's 25 minutes. However, that timer doesn't start until you cross a certain point in the game. And the save system works the same way the original game does. You can save. You can save after you finish an area. Yeah. So, the plot basically is a direct sequel to the original game. The prince and princess get married after the events of the first game. They're only happy for like 11 days before everything goes south. So, there's unknown to you, Jafar being a witness, being a wizard had cast a curse where he took over identity pretty much, and they had everybody see you as a beggar. So the game opens with you being chased out of the palace and you have to escape. He takes over the throne, makes the princess fall ill. You have to try to you have to find the means to defeat him, the aforementioned Shadow and the Flame, and then return to the castle to defeat Jafar again once and for all before the princess dies. And this reflected in this game by a leaf of trees. The tree with leaves. Let me say that correctly. The leaves slowly falls off once the tree's totally bare. The game ends. So. Like I said, pretty similar premise. Just that this game was like bigger in almost every way. This is a very fun game. I again played a lot of this as a kid back in the day, and I definitely enjoyed this game better than the first game. I wasn't crazy about the combat being much heavier in this game than it was the first game, but it wasn't like to the point of like annoying me too much. But it's like, I prefer the more exploring platforming aspects than the fighting combat. But the combat in this game that works pretty well. So. So this time around, the Super NES version of the game was handled by a company called Titus Software. So I don't think we've talked about them too much before in the past. I don't think most of their games came out here in the West because they were a European company.
So a lot
probably best known.
I was gonna say a lot of their stuff was made on the Game Boy.
Yep, yeah, a lot of ports also too.
Yeah.
So, not many of their games would have come out here in the West, but so they handled the port. They handled the port like this game, and this game was published by. I'm trying to remember. Give me a second to look up who actually published this. Because I actually forgot that. Psygnosis. They were they were also a big European
Yep.
European computer company. Their time period. So, compared to the first game, certain parts of this game were cut out because this game was much bigger than the Super NES the time period, which I knew about and expected going into this game, because it's like the original game was a smaller game. We have space, so let's expand the game. For this game, it's a much bigger game. We can't fit it all into the cart. We'll cut some areas. Yeah. Unfortunately for me, the areas that cut like one of the best areas of the game. The whole last sequence of the game, where the original game, after you get the flame and you're making your way back to your powers, there's a whole like trap sequence with the king. Like a Jafar traps you in like a very like chess kind of 3D strange world, and you have multiple shadows around and whatnot. It's like the very interesting, trippy, engaging, fun area of the game. Totally got this version of the game. The game just goes from you getting the shadow of the flame to the ending, pretty much. So, that was a bit disappointing, but I expected that kind of go again. But compared to how well compared to how well the first game got ported over, I don't know what happened with this version of the game, because honestly, it's not great. There are numerous issues with this version of the game, unfortunately. The biggest issue is, I don't know why they sped things up in this game.
Okay, it wasn't just me.
No, they did, because like the original game would play much slower.
Yeah.
I don't know why they did this. Maybe they felt console players wanted more faster action-based games, the games that opposed the original slower-paced platform or computer game. But that fast pace really can throw off your timing with the jumps.
Yep.
Kind of the enemies, especially for somebody like me who used to play the original game. Trying to adjust to that faster speed was difficult.
Or
maybe somebody
just going from the first game to the second game.
Yes. Yep, that too. So, there's several bugs in this game I noticed also as well too. Like areas, areas that got missed or didn't get play tested correctly. The controls felt definitely clunky in some areas. There definitely were spots where it felt like I should have made that jump and didn't make the jump for whatever reason.
Right.
So, but the alternate ending the original game had is missing out of this as well. Also, the voice work's missing, which is like a Super NES game. They definitely could have handled the voice work.
Yeah.
So, I will say this: graphically, the game looks good. Again, the Super NES version of the game improves the graphics, music original game. So, I do like the so like those changes I like. However, compared to the first game, the Prince character just looks off, because it's like the original game. He looks great. He definitely looks like he's balanced with the game. He's balanced with the graphics. In this game, it's like they upgraded the graphics, but they didn't upgrade the Prince. Yeah. So he has a very kind of like strange kind of almost 8-bit kind of look to him compared to like the first game port. So I don't know what was up with that, but this version of the game is playable if you're stuck with it. I don't have anything else, but after how great the first port was, this is a huge letdown for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, I echo a lot of that. So, one thing that threw me way off is like, you start off, you jump out of a window. Great graphics of showing the glass shattering behind him as he's jumping out and everything else, but like you're immediately thrown into combat, which set the tone for this game for me. I was like, cool, like you start off with your sword, maybe we're gonna get some sword fighting and whatever else, but that's where I noticed like there was like a speed difference, like it just felt faster. Other than that, there was a lot of backtracking in this game.
Yeah.
Like Greg had said, there's a point where like you're basically doing the same loop to basically make sure that this part of the ceiling, a la the floor, falls down so that you can continue to keep going. And I felt like a lot more of the levels were more cryptic than they were in the first game, which, for the most part, like, that's good. Like, you want a game that's got to make you think. I just felt like this game made you think just to make you think. There was no rhyme or reason to it, which is unfortunate. The big thing we didn't talk about in the last game, but I'm definitely bringing up here, is potions. So in the first game, you can have up to 12 potions, so essentially 12 hit points. You know, that can get you through a good portion of the game. One thing that I didn't mention that I did want to, for the first game, for the Sega Genesis, all the potions look the same. So that's not only the potions that give you life, but also the potions that take your life away. You kind of get that here with the second game. All the potions kind of look the same, and it's Russian roulette. There was at one point where I picked up a potion because I desperately needed potion, and all of a sudden I had inverted controls. And it's one thing to have to make precision jumps with the controls you already have, but then when they invert your controls, at that point I waited for a snake to bite me and just kill me. I just couldn't do it. So yeah, there are definitely aspects of this game that carry over from the first game, which are good. But like I said, like the potion thing, that totally killed this for me. I think I probably got about 30% of the way through this game before I finally was just like, you know what, like, it's a lot like the original, but there's some additions I'm just not happy with. And you know what, even the added combat here, for me was too much. Like, there was no need to add as much combat. I liked when I think of Prince of Persia, especially this era of Prince of Persia, like, I'm thinking puzzle platformer, not action platformer. Which obviously the games that came after, those were all action platformers. So yeah, this was just kind of like a pivot that didn't quite make sense to me. Other than that, graphics are beautiful. Levels are definitely more varied in color. You get some parallax scrolling in the background. There's definitely a lot here to like. I feel like the sound, as far as like music and sound effects, kind of took a bit of a dip compared to the first game. But the voiceover work that is here is obviously welcomed, and that's a great addition. But other than that, I mean, the points go to the first game. I don't want to say this game's completely skippable, because I don't think that's the case. I think you should experience this game. But it's also this is a harder one to recommend unless you are a Prince of Persia fan.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from here, Joe, and also I think that you playing this version of the game first probably didn't help you any. I'd be curious if you have time later on, if you were willing to take a few minutes to go back and play the original PC version of this game and see how you, and see maybe if you because you will enjoy that version better. The question is, we enjoy that version enough to improve your overall impression of this game and wash the bad taste out of your mouth. Because I agree, the Super NES version of this game is unfortunately not great. Yeah. And for anybody coming to this game with their first experience of this, it's going to be like, ugh. So, but like I said before, I prefer this game over the first game for sure. Again, at least it's original PC version. Yeah. Because while I agree with you, I'm not a big. I'm not the biggest fan of the extra combat. I think the other improvements that this game made, was just overall being a bigger game, are all points in its favor. Yeah. So this version of the game, sadly, is definitely do not play. I mean, like I said, you can play it if you're stuck with it, if I don't have anything else. But the original version of the game is so much better, every other way. But it's where like Prince of Persia, the Super NES version of the game is definitely the way to go. But this game definitely sticks to the original computer version. But yeah, so it's kind of unfortunate that the first game got ported over so great, and I'm not great. This one just not.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I'm not sure. Yeah, like I said before, I'm not. Like I said before, I'm not really sure what happened here, but it's just unfortunate.
Yeah.
Also, there's also loading time between the screens for some reason. Yeah. So it's like for Super NES game to have loading time is a bit. I mean, it's not major. It's only like a couple seconds, but it is definitely noticeable. It's noticeable, especially if you're going from screen to screen a lot. Mm. But yeah, so so I guess we mentioned the original version of the game did sell. Sell and was reviewed very well. The Super NES version of the game definitely got mixed reviews, as you would expect. Game Pro gave it mixed reviews. Power Ultimate gave it 70%. So, Power Limited, that was the PC version of the game. Game Pro is the only publication that they reviewed this game back in the day. So, unfortunate about that. But the third game purchased for the 3D. You said that you weren't aware of it, Joe. I'll mention real quick about that game. The original plan was Prince of Persia 3D to get ported to PlayStation, and that version of the game is pretty far along. But for some reason, perhaps the contract, they shelved that version of the game and released it for Dreamcast instead.
Huh. Interesting.
So, this is available on both computer, on computer like Dreamcast. But the PlayStation version of the game just never got finished because that shifted because that shift in production. So,
interesting.
But when I understand, the Dreamcast version did incorporate many of the changes and enhancements that the PlayStation version of the game was supposed to have on it. So, get that. So, anyway, so Prince of Persia, definitely fun to go back to this franchise. The original games, I should say, because I said before, the modern games are definitely a different beast. But I'm not saying it's good, or bad. I'm just saying it's very different. So, which is fine by me. So, but anyway, so yeah, definitely fun going back to these games for sure. So
yeah, and I just want to mention, sorry, so.
That's fine. Go ahead.
There's a website called myabandonware.com.
Yep.
So, both and many more versions of Prince of Persia 1 and 2 are available there. And I believe since both of them are DOS games, you can actually play them in the browser. So you really don't have to worry about downloading the files or anything like that. You could play it straight from the browser. Just wanted to throw that out there since we were talking about other ways to play it, and it's not available on Steam. So
right, for sure. So, Dave. So I was going to ask you here for any wrap up thoughts that you might have on 1 and 2 before we move on here, Joe. So,
I mean, obviously, 1 was a beautiful port. They did a great job with it. What happened with the second one, I don't know. I'm gonna have to play the PC version now of Prince of Persia 2, which is why I was on my abandonware. So I'm gonna definitely check that out, and maybe I will come to appreciate Prince of Persia 2, and if that's the case, I will definitely mention that the next time I re-record. But, I mean...
Cool, yeah. That's all I can ask for, so...
Yeah, like I said, I had experience with the first game, so, I kind of knew what I was getting into there. I expected pretty much more of the same with the second one. I got that, but also kind of some jank with it, so, and I'm a huge fan of the franchise when they, started doing the... Tomb Raider-esque versions of the game. But yeah, I mean, it's a great franchise. It was fun to go back and play these original games. And like I said, I can recommend the Super NES one all day long for the first game. Second game, not so much.
Fair. Yep. Yeah. Like I said before, asking somebody asking somebody to give the original game a shot. It's pretty much like all I can ask for. So so I do appreciate you at least saying you're willing to give it give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So but okay, for sure. So. All right, so let's go on to the ending here then. As I mentioned before, there are cheat codes and passwords you can use for both games to help you out if you need a leg up. There's actually a cheat menu available in Prince of Persia 1 on Super NES. Oh. You enter continue, you enter you enter a code, hit OK, you'll hear a tone if done correctly, and then when that's enabled, when you're playing the game, you can then pause the game and do a controller sequence to bring up a cheat menu, which allows you to do things like level select, sound test, option to get the Prince additional units of health, where you can also kill enemies we can also kill enemies on the screen with button push as well.
Oh, okay.
So definitely a very nice some nice options to get with here the cheat menu for sure. So and there are passwords, of course, since the password game. There are passwords you can use to jump right to the to jump right to the last level with all full health if you want to as well. Also, so. The game sold well, so prices of the eBay are pretty good. 46 copies were listed for sale on eBay as been looking. 40 copies have recently sold. These prices are North America only, include shipping. Card only ranging from $21 to $35 for selling prices. CIB is a bit wider range. Copies of CIB sold from $63 to $141. Yeah. And sale copy of the game sold recently for a not bad sale price. Sold for $15. Okay. So, so card definitely pretty good. Pretty good pricing. Definitely affordable by Super NES standards. So, I was happy to see that at least. Prince of Persia 2 for Super NES also includes a level skip option. It also has a level skip option available also, which is basically a stage select. So you can basically pick stages you want to go to, and again you can use password to jump ahead later on the game if you want to as well. Also, like I said before, that is one advantage the password system has over a save. Right. Say a battery, and passwords like both games are pretty simple too. I mean, they're not really that hard to write down, and keep straight. So no, confusing character problems or whatnot. So, right. But anyway, this game obviously did not sell as well, so it's much harder game to find on eBay. Prices, however, were not that much more expensive, probably because nobody cares. 13 copies of the game are sold recently on eBay. 13 copies are currently listed as we do research. 19 copies of the game sold recently. These prices for card only selling ranging from $33 to $58. CIB copies selling from $52 to $112. So again, higher but not out of range as far as if you're a collector looking at the game for your collection and whatnot. So definitely increased, but definitely not too bad considering the fact this game didn't sell as well.
Yeah, so that's definitely dipped from the video I had seen on YouTube. So the guy that I saw that was reviewing Prince of Persia 2, he stated that at the time, a cart for Prince of Persia 2 was over $100. Now, granted, this video I think was either because I can't remember quite which video it was, but it was either 4 years ago or 7 years ago when it was uploaded. So
it was during the pandemic. That makes sense because
correct, right?
Because all the console prices spiked during the pandemic. Right. So, but Super NES pricing has also gone through dips and curves over years. Yeah. I think the trend recently, the recent trend seems like it's going down again. So, as people pretty much forget about the system kind of sort of as they get older and move on to more systems that are more recently retro, the Xbox and whatever. So
it's not even that. It's we're getting older, and as we get older, people in our community, unfortunately, are either leaving voluntarily or, unfortunately passing away.
Yeah.
And that floods the market with a bunch of games that weren't there before. And, every hobby goes through that. But right now, big time, NES, Super NES, Genesis. Genesis has always been kind of low, but the more expensive Genesis games are starting to come down. Sega CD, action figures in general, trading cards, things of that nature. We're aging out of it,
Yeah.
and it's a sad reality, but it is fact.
True. Yeah. Yep. For sure. So. But anyway, that was the games. Like I said before, I never played Super NES version of the games before, so it was definitely a pleasant surprise to go back and see how good the first one was, and also sad how bad the second version ended. Ended up being. But yeah, definitely fun to go back to. So because I prefer the older games over the newer ones. The newer ones are fine. It's just they're fine. It's just like I said, the gameplay is very different in those games. So like me being used to how a franchise operates one way, I got kind of feel the same way about Castlevania. I'm not really a fan of the modern 3D games, but the Metroidvanias are very fun. But it just happens as franchises change and evolve over the years. So And speaking about long running franchises, we're going to be looking at another compilation next time, but kind of a compilation different way. So one of the most classic and beloved computer role-playing games has been the Wizardry series, which along with Might and Magic has always been a staple of old school 80s, 90s computer RPG games. Wizardry, some of the games got ported to consoles. I remember playing Wizardry 1 for the NES, for example. So, but in Japan only, they took the first three games they put in one cart. So we're going to be looking at Wizardry 1, 2, 3, the story of, I think it's pronounced Lingamin, which I said was Japan only, but there is a full English patch available for the game as well also.
Okay.
So, I told you this already, Joe. Maybe just forgot, but but I think there's a link. If you scroll back through our Discord, there's a link there to.
Okay. I was gonna say, I'm sure you brought it up, but I'm literally laser focused on whatever we're covering, and don't try not to mingle in between. That'll mess me all up. But anyways, I'm looking forward to it. I recently played a little bit of the Wizardry remaster that they did.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a very good version of the game.
So to go back and play this Super Nintendo port should be absolutely fun.
Yes.
Maybe not. We'll see.
Well, I'm the same boat. I'm very curious to see how I'm very curious to see how they handled it. Based on the screenshots, the game looks the same as the original, the original PC game. So, but anyway, and we have some. And we have some spoiler, maybe not as good games coming up. So I'm definitely hoping for strong game here to game improving that patch. But so anyway, as always, thank you very much for recording with me, Joe, and thank you very much for everybody out there listening to giving us some of your time. Questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, etc. can be left on our Facebook page, or also an email. It can be sent to me directly at the SNES podcast @yahoo.com. Joe, how can I reach you?
Hey, I have a pretty public Facebook, which is definitely not work or family friendly, so keep that in mind. I also do the Radical Retro Roundup. It's coming. Just leave it at that. Just follow me on the socials. JOESUX30 will get you, I think, pretty much almost everything. I think that's my Instagram, my Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now. And I think that's even how you access my YouTube. Not that my YouTube is very active, but yeah. I mean, I'm around. Google me. Believe it or not, you can Google me and it'll pop up. I don't play guitar, so if you do find the Joe Copel that is playing guitar, that is someone else, not me. Not me.
Yeah, well, everybody's on Google these days, so
right.
But I did not realize there was a second version of you floating around out there. That's interesting, but
yeah, apparently he plays really good guitar.
Have you ever tried that? Because it's a very hard instrument to learn, I think.
So my father is a guitarist, so there was a point where he tried to instill that on me. I can't say I'm not musically inclined because I can write
It's
lyrics.
not easy to learn. It's definitely harder to pick up to pick up and play. So.
We always joked because everyone but my mother is musically inclined in some way. Mm-hmm. So my dad plays guitar, my sister Laura sings, and my sister Jennifer plays piano, and started to kind of learn guitar. And, like, I'm the lyricist, so if we had a family band, like, I would be either Paul or John sitting in the background penning everything while they're creating the melody and music for it. But, yeah, I mean, closest thing to guitar for me, other than learning in, like, middle school with my dad, would be Guitar Hero or Rock Band.
There was actually a game. We're not going to cover it. I don't think we're ever going to cover it because it requires like special accessory. But there was actually a piano teaching game with the Super NES.
I do know about that game. Yeah.
So it was also available in the NES and Genesis also. I think also had a version of it. I think. Yep. But that requires the keyboard, and the keyboard goes for pretty penny these days. So
yeah, I mean, well, it's like the mountain biking game. Like we'll probably never cover that because I mean that it looks like a fun game, but also like that accessory is like thousands of dollars all set.
Yeah. Well, Mario Paint, when it came out to the Switch recently, that actually requires you to plug in a mouse to play that correctly. So, which I was a bit surprised by, but like, okay, that makes sense, because the original game used a mouse. So, and like, Super NES mouses are also pretty expensive to have these days as well, too. So it's like, but yeah, plugging like a third party mouse in like your Switch is kind of like a bit of a weird experience. Experience the first time doing it.
That's why they made sure with the Switch 2 you can use the Joy-Con as a mouse.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, I afraid about that, but okay. All right, so so looking forward to that. Looking forward to looking for a new episode like we record in 2 weeks. So thanks again everybody for listening. Give us a few of your time. Stay safe, be well. We'll catch you again later. Take care, all.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Deep power.